Pick Six with Mully and Haugh starts now.
How gutted do you feel now that the Bulls do not have a pick in the NBA draft after failing to land a top 4 pick and seeing their selection convey to the Orlando Magic as part of the Nikola Vucevic deal? Is it Suns deal or bust now?
Doesn't it feel like that? Like maybe they can do something and get a younger version of a rim protector as opposed to whatever version of a center Vooch is. It just feels. Honestly, after that happened, and I knew it wasn't going to happen, and I tried to convince myself into the possibility, and I sat in front of it. But after that happened, I felt a sense of hopelessness. I felt a sense of absolute hopelessness. It is a terrible way to go into a season. They're out of assets. It didn't work. You know, Lonzo Ball's never coming back. I got to tell you, I just sat there and I thought to myself, like, they don't even have like a chance to get Io in the second round. You know, they literally have nothing. And I did feel this sort of darkness kind of hang over my head, this dark cloud that has been raining on the United Center all these many years. There was a crack of lightning, and just all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm wet, and I'm thinking, how did this happen? And it was from weeping.
It was a kick in the backside. I don't like how it was portrayed on television. I thought they did a really poor job in executing the whole thing in the most minuscule writing I've ever seen. You know,
you knew it, though.
You did know it, to right? Orlando as part of. I mean, terrible.
But didn't you know when?
No, I didn't. Honestly,
you honestly,
no, because I had the volume down. I honestly thought, here we go. The Bulls are going to be getting a top.
So you're mad because you were duped.
Yeah.
I thought it was terrible. They should have showed the Bulls logo. In my opinion, it should have been the Bulls logo, and then those little tiny print should have been now conveyed to Orlando as part of the Vooch deal, not vice versa. Listen, I've never now been more uninterested in a professional draft than I am for this one. And I don't know what their Bulls are going to do. You can't run it back because what's the point? You should have had more foresight to know that Vic was available, and your plan should have been different.
I think that you were pretty, indifferent to the 2021 NHL draft. I'd challenge that a little bit. This could be the draft that maybe you're going to pay.
I'm all about clear and present, David.
Okay, you are a man in the moment. I'm just glad I followed on Twitter instead of being disappointed like you were or duped by the telecast, because you're right, they should have probably had some sort of reference to the Bulls. But as the Bulls reacted to it, Mark Eversley looking like he wanted to pound his fist or kick a door or break a garbage can, if you will, like Ryan Poles style, I think that is the cue that every Bulls fan should take. They should be angry about where this team is. They should be fed up and frustrated as Mark Eversley looked when he got the news for good. They were really planning on winning the draft lottery? Seriously? That hope is not a plan. That is not a strategy that works. You've got to have a backup plan. If this Phoenix Suns deal is the best they can do, shame on them. There's got to be a more creative way to shake up your roster. There's got to be a more aggressive way to give yourself a chance. You've got to improve. Waiting for Lonzo Ball, that doesn't work either. That's not going anywhere. So now that you have some clarity, if you needed it, I don't know why you needed it. Maybe it seemed always silly to me that they were going to cling to anything that was more than a 1.8 chance of happening. So now, go in a direction, figure it out. Look at the rosters, see who's available. Anybody but James Harden.
That's good. Is it possible that Eversley was going to kick the garbage can because they picked the wrong guy to represent him? Dalen Terry, he's like, I knew that unlucky son of a gun wasn't the right choice. Could that have been what's going through his head?
Why does Betty Bold have a busy Tuesday night?
Okay, next question.
Voice of Ozzie Guillen, our guest at 8 o'clock. What are you expecting from lefty reliever Garrett Crochet after the White Sox reinstated the former number 1 pick over 13 months after Tommy John surgery. Were 6 appearances between AAA Charlotte, AA Birmingham enough to get him ready, or will he be learning on the job?
I'm not afraid to say that I think we are all a little bit in the dark here. I would like to have more information about where he is medically and what's more expected or routine when you have somebody coming back from this kind of surgery and this short of a rehab stint, because it does seem rather brief. And I don't know if it's enough, but I also am not, a physician. I'm not a pitching coach. That's not my level of expertise, because you look at it from a baseball perspective, and this is good news. This is great news for the White Sox. They have a bullpen that could use Garrett Crochet. I'm a little confused, and that might be overstating it. I'm a little bit perplexed by how many different roles they envision for him. I would think that if you get somebody back as prized of a left arm as he has, you get somebody like him, a former first-round draft pick who factors into your future, I would want a clearer path to recovery and to contributions. I would want to know exactly what he's going to do and when, rather than leave it open-ended about, well, he could be the long guy, he could be the short guy, he could be the start, whatever the case may be. I want more, I think, structure in his recovery.
I agree with you. I want more, but I don't think they know yet, David, because of how quick this is going to be. And you mentioned that he could be a guy that the bullpen could use. He could be a guy that their rotation could also use. So let's see how this all plays out. I hope it's not too quick. I think he's really exciting. I think he's going to be really good. So I think that's something worth watching. And they're playing better right now. I mean, they kind of live and die by the long ball over there. But if you can get the long ball and what you got out of Lance Lynn last night, they might catch up to the Cubs quicker than you might think.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that this is more about, desperation and need than it is about what's best for the kid. I don't think he was pitching particularly well in his brief stop in Birmingham and then Charlotte. I just worry. I think 13 months is long enough for a comeback from Tommy John. That's not what my worry is. I just don't know how they're going to use him or if they're ready for him. I think they just need somebody. And I hope that's not the case. I hope they got a plan and they have an understanding of it. And if it wasn't for how wretched the season has gone, maybe I'd trust them a little bit more. But this feels like they need him more than he may need to be there right now. But again,
feels rushed.
It does to me, but I'm operating out of a lack of information. They, normally you say, well, the team knows more and but a lot hasn't worked out of that bullpen. And I'm just worried that they think there's some magic elixir there that isn't real.
Well, if I start making your guys money, I can answer these questions.
That's David Ross. And when you see an unorthodox lineup like David Ross filled out before Tuesday's game, one that triggered the likes of fans like me, bears the brunt of criticism, Ross or Jed Hoyer, Carter Hawkins. Is this a valid manager gripe, or is it roster construction?
It's a really good question, and I know for a fact that it fired up Dustin because he let us know about it. He wasn't pleased with the lineup the minute it came out. I wonder if they won if he'd have been pleased. I just think that you're unconventional in what you're doing, and then you obviously lose for the fourth straight game that they've lost. So they've lost 2 series since last they won a game, and they've got another game tonight. And it feels like this is an important game because of the off day. If you get to 5 straight losses and you don't play again till Friday night, you're gonna be just left sitting on that while time ticks away, and we're not going to be able to say much positive about them before we hit the weekend. So I hope, and then they're going to Philly, right? And then who do they have after Philly? The Mets? I'm just saying, it's not like
tough schedule.
It's
tough
not laid out for them, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit worrisome when you start putting together a 5-game, if they lose tonight, losing streak. So they need to stem that tide tonight, and you got to have your best lineup out there. But look, Bellinger, that looked more serious than it was. So that's good news. but he wasn't able to go yesterday. So I guess your argument, Dustin, would be more about second base DH than anything else.
Masterboni at second,
Yeah.
Hosmer DHing,
You're right.
Barnhart catching. I just think you can't give Jan when you're already down 2 guys. This isn't roster construction completely. When you're already down 2 guys in Nico Horner and now Bellinger, you can't then decide, you know what we're also going to do? We're going to give Jan Gomes the night off. Barnhart does a pretty decent job behind the plate, but hasn't done much with the stick yesterday. And then he has the passed ball.
Oh,
wild pitch,
that was
pass ball.
bad.
Right?
But,
Okay.
but Dustin, don't you think a lot of what they do is based on metrics and based
Oh,
on?
I'm sure it is,
some-
but
yeah.
you know how I feel about metrics.
Right,
You
right.
can't. They are useful, but you cannot just be so metrics. I felt like going into they gave that game away before the game started. The game was over. I'm thrilled that Matt Mervis hit his first career home run, but that game just felt like. We have our stopper. We have Justin Steele, who's been fantastic,
But it was
except
sick.
for the 4th inning last night.
Had the flu.
And they thought
Yeah.
that he might be able to, great. They got a crooked number only because they got a 2-run home run with 2 out in the 9th.
Yeah.
That another Sammy Sosa-esque, say a Suzuki home run.
Yeah, that was kind of just
Meaningless.
a meaningless
But
homer.
you got the first homer from.
I said that. That was good.
Yeah, I'm glad for Mash
I am
Mervis, but
too.
big deal. I mean, they lost their 4th game in a row, and Dustin's point is well taken. That lineup on this night, I don't know that you can do that. Jan Gomes has your highest batting average with runners in scoring position. If he's not going to be in the lineup, I don't know that Patrick Wisdom can be on the bench as
Or
well.
how about having DH?
Well, whatever,
Right?
however you want to structure it. When you've got Masterboni, Hosmer, and Madrigal in the lineup, I think you're asking for trouble. You're not going to be as competitive as you could be. And yeah, roster construction, these are things we're going to continue to talk about. Why did Jed, put this bullpen together the way that he did? And are they they're benched? Could they have more flexibility? All these kind of questions are valid. But I think last night's lineup, we do get triggered by Masterboni. He's playing second base. I don't know if I know I give Bellinger the night off because of the knee situation. But if he's off, I don't know that Wisdom can be off. And if Wisdom's off, I don't think Jan Gomes can be off too.
Can I just ask a quick question about this very subject? If you're putting together a team and you decide you got a couple off days, so you reduce your pitching staff. If he had the flu and you had whether it's Wisniewski still there
Or Assad.
would you have moved somebody into that spot instead of having your first loss of the season for this guy?
I think that's a good. I think
If
it's
Justin
probably-
Steele has the flu, then couldn't you have just had somebody else step in?
I bet if Assad was on that roster, he would have started last night.
But aside, isn't he injured now? Isn't he on?
No, they just moved him down.
Okay, I have to check on that, but I think it's interesting because that's a suggestion they could have anticipated this illness. I don't know that that's. I don't know about that.
But do you always operate that best case scenario will always happen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think probably.
I think sometimes you give yourself a little
Well,
cover.
especially with your ace or the guy that is your presumed ace.
Yes.
And Justin Steele for the first time last night gave up 5 extra base hits in the same game. So he was as bad as he's ever been, and that to me was an exception, not the rule.
The few questions I have.
What's your expectations for Victor Wembanyama now that the Spurs won the NBA draft lottery? Was this good or bad for the NBA and for Wemby? Did Greg Popovich just extend his career?
All good questions, natural questions. I think it probably did extend his career. How long? That's up for debate, apparently. I'm not trying to rush him out of the league. I just think when you got somebody who has his perspective on life, and I just don't know if the grind is going to be deemed worth it for somebody who has accomplished as much as Pop has accomplished. He's 74 years old. He still has a lot of great life ahead of him. I don't know if he wants to be spending it, 82 game schedule, playoffs. So that let's wait and see what happens with him. There might be an heir apparent when Brett Brown. We'll see. As far as Wembanyama, In 3 years, he could be the MVP. That's not an accelerated clock. You look at the great ones, and I think, Derrick Rose, he was the youngest MVP ever. He was how many years into the league when he won in 2011? So this is something that you can see reasonable expectations. They're enormous, but his potential is that too. There's never been a player coming into the league, even Zion Williamson, a couple years ago. The expectations were enormous for him as well. But I think now you see even more reason to believe that Wembanyama, if he can stay healthy, can realize and meet those expectations. So this is great for the league because San Antonio is as respected of a franchise as there is.
Well, if Woj is right, then the Spurs should be in the play-in tournament next year. If this is the greatest athlete in the history of team sports potentially, then they should be right there next year because the West isn't that great. The West is very top heavy, and the middle is soft. So if I was Pop, I would stick around, but that's just me. I'd like to talk about Wemby though. I kind of like Vic, or how about VW? Could you see an ad campaign already? Can that guy fit into a VW, especially if he's now 7'5", as Woj reported?
He grew apparently from David's earlier pronouncement.
I do like Dustin's VW little play there, though.
VW.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's cool. VW. You could see a lot of endorsement possibilities there.
Okay, so I think if I'm following the NBA correctly, that Pop gets to stay for as long as he wants, provided he doesn't lose in a playoff series.
Exactly.
You wait until he builds that team up to a playoff team, and then you go in, and then you fire him immediately if they don't win a title. That's the modern NBA. I hope that Pop extends his career. I got a lot of time for the guy. I think he's well worth listening to, and I love hearing him talk basketball. My expectations for Victor Wembanyama are different now that he's going to San Antonio. So I think my number one expectation is almost like fear. I worry about his ability. When a guy is that natural a player, when he's got the feet this guy has, and he's that tall, and he can knock down jumpers and all the rest of it, I worry that people are going to body up the guy. And I worry that, he's going to fold like a house of cards when he gets hit hard in the NBA. And there are guys out there that will do that. They won't be able to compete with him, so they'll give him the business. And there's different ways of that happening. And I don't think we're even aware of how physical the NBA can get. And I worry for the kid. He's 19 years old, and he's thin as a rail. And, will he get caught in a rainstorm? Because I don't even know if he gets hit by it. He's so thin. He's just could stand between the raindrops. He's got to bulk up. He's got to, the one thing you don't know about the guy, and you won't know about it till he gets into the league, until he starts playing, is how competitive he is, how much it means to him. Is he just a guy that's relying on his natural talent, or is he a guy that's going to do all the extra work and make sure that he has, potentially the most successful career ever? That's what they're talking about. And you never know. You never know until you see a guy in action. So I'm very curious, and I hope Pop lasts for a very long time.
It's the right question, and I'm not sure yet.
How about Doc Rivers getting fired after 3 years in Philly? Has the NBA gone mad? Are there better coaches on the street than the ones on the benches these days?
That is crazy. This is the NBA now. Every time you lose a playoff series, you got to go. Here's my major disappointment is with Joel Embiid. Here's a guy that believed in the process, has never really gotten his due, and then with this guy coaching him, he becomes the leading scorer in the league for 2 straight years, and he finally wins the MVP. And he's going to stand there and watch as James Harden is calling shots because of his relationship with Northwestern's very own Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey has this love for James Harden, and clearly in this case has chosen Harden over the head coach. And I think that stinks. And I think Joel Embiid ought to be more empowered to say, hey, no, that's my coach. I want you to keep him instead of just having Doc thrown out like yesterday's old newspaper. It just bothers the hell out of me that they respond this way to this guy, and clearly Harden is the guy that got rid of him, and Daryl Morey is more worried about the player than
Daryl
the coach.
Morey is the guy, yeah, but being led by Harden.
Yes.
You're right.
I don't want to degrade a local guy made very, very good in Doc Rivers, right? Maywood product, proviso, but he has lost 10 game sevens as a head coach. That's not good. I see a big rotating carousel here. There's a bunch of guys, as you point out in the question, that are out on the street. I think they're all going to be back on a bench, just in a different city.
This is terrible for the league. I mean, the fact that the guys are accomplished, are getting fired, Monty Williams, Nick Nurse, Budenholzer, what he did for Milwaukee, and this is the thanks that he gets, and now the latest is Doc Rivers. Look, you can say what you want about his Game 7 record, but he is as good for the league as James Harden is bad for the league. James Harden calling the shots and wanting his guy.
Joke.
It is a joke. This guy plays when he wants to play, he turns it on and off because he is an extraordinary shooter. And when he decides to play, he is great. But most of the time, you don't know what you're going to get. And the fact that he's running this franchise and going to run another one into the ground, good luck with that, Daryl Morey. You just cut the classiest coach you're going to find on an NBA bench. So Doc Rivers, if he wants to work next year, somebody's going to be lucky to hire him. And it might be a television network, because he would be terrific in the studio or courtside, wherever he wants to be. And yeah, there are better coaches unemployed that are being employed right now. I don't know how that will affect other decisions that are being made. I don't think it's going to affect Chicago, but there are a lot of qualified guys out there.
And Dustin, let me ask you something. Did Doc Rivers lose Game 7, or did his team not turn up for Game 7
James
in Boston?
Harden.
James Harden
is an embarrassment.
and Embiid were god-awful in that game. That's why they lost the game. So we can sit here and pick apart coaching and all that, but when you have a dead-ass team that doesn't turn up for a Game 7, no one's going to be able to win.
It's a pick six.
Eastern Conference Finals tip tonight. Heat at Celtics. Who are you taking tonight? Who are you taking in the series? How many will it go?
I think it goes 6. I think the Celtics in 6. Jason Tatum has established himself as, like he said, just ask him, one of the greatest players in the league. Certainly one of the best playoff performers. Jimmy Butler's not going down quietly. That never happens. And I think that's a credit to the Heat and the mentality. Eric Spoelstra, what he's been able to do. They're getting it done, even though they have had injuries that matter. But I don't think that they're going to get to the NBA Finals again. It would be a tremendous accomplishment if playoff Jimmy Butler leads the Miami Heat back to the NBA Finals under these circumstances, the way they got into the playoffs, beating the Bulls and then taking advantage, and beating the Bucks and taking advantage. I just don't think it's realistic to think they can beat the Celtics, who are deeper and better, not as well coached. We'll find out if they lose, if they fire their coach, because that could be coming next. But if they don't win this series, stay tuned. But I think they will win this series in 6.
I think the Celtics will win the series, but I would not bet them at a price of minus 500, according to our guys over at Bet Rivers. I would take playoff Jimmy Butler in the plus 370 in the series, and I would also take the 7.5 points tonight with Jimmy Butler. We can ask Joe about that in a little bit. But yeah, it should be Celtics in 6.
I think 6 is easy to say. Playoff Jimmy is a real thing. I know people outside of Miami laugh at it and everybody turns their nose up, but that there's something about Miami, despite the injuries, where they feel like they're this strangely chosen team and they're on this roll. Boston is the better team, and Boston has home court, and Boston should win this series in like 5 games. But I don't think the Heat realize that, and I don't think they play like that, and I think it's going to be harder than you imagine. So I'll go with with Boston in 6, but it really should be Boston easier and earlier. The problem is both these teams know each other, and Jimmy is just playoff. Jimmy's real. It's a real thing that happens.
Jimmy likes playoffs.
Jimmy loves.
Jimmy's good in the playoffs.
Jimmy
wins in the playoffs.
Yeah. What do you think of that? All right, we've got the